Alright, hey guys, so in this video we're going to be talking about the diaspora that's been going on TikTok. Okay, so if you guys don't know, I'll basically leave a couple of clips maybe before or during the video.
Why are y'all using our culture to disrespect us? I want to know where the disrespect is. I see up and down my For You
that we made popular only when we got on.
There's so many things with this, like, wrong with this.
Just all shut the fuck up and end this
diaspora bullshit is dumb as fuck.
So I totally agree with you that the diaspora war is really stupid. But I also believe that this video is very condescending and is downplaying the African experience in America.
Now for those of you guys who don't know, I did have my experiences of being called the you-know-what, African booty scratcher. I've had my negative experiences with African Americans, but I also had some positive experiences. And so I sort of want to get into depth about why our relationship is the way it is, how we describe our odd relationship. So I basically, after seeing all this drama going on TikTok, I went and I looked up the relationship. I went typed it in Google and I came across a paper called Examining the Social Distance Between Africans and African Americans, the Role of Internalized Racism. And what I'm going to be sharing with you guys is how this paper specifically gets into the psychological effects of racism and why our odd relationship is the way that it is, mainly because of white supremacy. Taking a look into this reading, it says here, separate focus groups were considered with African American and African participants in an effort to better understand the nature of the relationship between both groups. During focus groups, the origins of prejudice and stereotypes about both groups were discussed, and ways of ameliorating existing social distance was explored. Participants also completed the modified nationalization inventory, an internalized racism skill that measures the presence of racist beliefs. Later on in this study, they come to the conclusion that the amount of racist beliefs, the presence of racist beliefs, is something of the responsibility and delivery of white supremacy. So white supremacy and racism is part of the reason why people hold such racist beliefs against each other, and it's associated with stereotypes. So things like African Americans being lazy and Africans being barbaric people who live in huts and etc. Looking further into the paper, it gets more in detail about the psychological effects of racism and white supremacy, especially on those of black or African populations, who are usually the ones most targeted. So here it says, both slavery and colonization are based upon oppressive strategies that denied Africans the opportunity to maintain a psychological integrity related to their cultural foundations. As such, one of the worst impacts of slavery and the social construction, which is colonialism, the psychological impact on the oppressed. It is hypothesized by several authors that one of the remnants of colonialism and slavery evident in the end of colonial rule is a kind of self-loathing and dual consciousness, or a kind of self not self persona, especially among African Americans. Later on, it also says that even Africans who have had similar experiences of white domination that African Americans have faced also have this sort of self not self persona. This sort of self not self persona can be seen when Africans and African Americans don't want to be associated with each other. When African Americans say that, oh, I'm not African, I'm from here. Africans don't want to be associated with African Americans because of the stereotypes of what African Americans have been shown to be in the Western world. Psychological effects, it says perceived racism and internalized racism may evoke psychological stress responses such as anger, paranoia, anxiety, helplessness, hopelessness, frustration, resentment, and fear. Further on it reads, this describes an individual who may see no way of escaping the situation and thus seeks no relief for himself or herself, thereby developing a form of learned helplessness. Again, later on in this paper, they start talking about coping styles and how Africans and African Americans sort of deal with all of this psychological trauma, whatever you want to call it, of racism and white supremacy, and all that stuff, man. And it's some of the coping styles are some unhonorable coping styles, such as us simply just attacking each other with stereotypes of each other, which is really what it is. We're both trying to avoid stereotypes of each other on both sides. African Americans want to avoid the stereotype of the poor African who has no water, you know what I'm saying, who lives in huts, and Africans want to avoid the stereotype of African Americans of being lazy, being on the streets, and all that stuff, you know. That's mainly what it comes down to, man. And when African Americans and Africans disrespect each other and come at each other, do this, they always attack each other with stereotypes. As an African, I've been attached with lots of stereotypes by African Americans, you know what I mean? And I've also heard African parents, it's mainly African parents who've done it. If you're African first generation, you know, that sort of attach African Americans to the stereotypes. This is not done because people are bad people. Like, you know what I mean? It's really just you are misinformed and you don't really know what it's like being around people. It's the media, it's propaganda, and that's all you really shown. Now, speaking more from personal experience, I do want to say that when Africans tell African Americans that we have been sort of bullied, you know what I'm saying? And not even just bullied, like a lot of African Americans, when they talk about this in the TikTok platform, a lot of African Americans that I was seeing on TikTok who are participating within this diaspora war, they were gaslighting a lot of Africans in our experiences, and I didn't really appreciate that. And so I made a video basically the same exact thing as this, and sort of I addressed like, yeah, the gaslighting needs to stop, because the same way African Americans wouldn't want me gaslighting them and sort of ignoring any negative experiences they may have had with Africans. You know what I'm saying? I would appreciate it if they could also, you know, not gaslight us. You know what I'm saying? Because certain people disrespect us by telling us that, oh, you were only called an African booty scratcher. You were only called an African booty scratcher. It's just a middle school joke. Like, get over it. But it gets a lot deeper than that. And honestly, personally, I've been through experiences that are way more deeper than just a joke in the classroom. You know what I mean? Like, and I've even seen African Americans claim that they've been called African booty scratchers as well. Now, my personal opinion might not even matter for the video, but what I will say, I won't disrespect or disregard anybody's experiences, but I will say as a community, as a race, as a people, we do need to get better. You know what I'm saying? And sort of stop associating each other with stereotypes. You know what I'm saying? And sort of work to heal this and create black domination. You know what I'm saying? Let's take ourselves to the top of the food chain again. Let's run this stuff again, you know? With that being said, guys, if you guys like this video, definitely leave a like. If you're African or African American, you want to talk about your experiences, be sure to share them in the comment section. I'll be very interested to read and learn more about them, especially on the African American side. You know what I'm saying? I want to know what you guys experienced from Africans. You know what I'm saying? Educate me on how it's like. You know what I'm saying? And if you guys feel gaslighters as well, let me know. You know what I'm saying? You can also join my server at the Nile Valley Elite, where you can learn about Sudanese history. You can subscribe to the channel where you can get talks like this for, you know what I'm saying, self-improvement for black men and history lessons. So with that being said, guys, we out.